So I think we've gone 2 for 2 in terms of awesome sessions so far, and I know we're about to go 3 for 3. So I'm really excited for this next session. We are joined by Lauren Denton from Google and Ariel Opelt from InfoTrust. Lauren is a sales engineering manager, and I think I actually heard the term durable from her about a year ago. So glad to have Lauren. And then Ariel is an audience specialist with InfoTrust, and they've both been doing a lot of work to help our customers really think about activation strategies for data in this privacy-centric world. So with that, Ariel, I'll hand it over to you.
Awesome. Thank you, Pat. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining the Durability Summit, and thank you for joining our conversation on how to think about your activation strategy in 2021 and beyond. Today, we're going to talk about a couple different things. We're going to start with understanding how activation is being impacted by the privacy changes that we've already been talking about and hearing about this morning. Next, we're going to evaluate the current landscape and look at a couple durable activation tips. And then we'll close with 3 tips on how to get started. We wanted to keep with that trend of 3s. But before we jump in, let's take a moment to introduce ourselves. So as Pat mentioned, my name is Ariel Opelt. I'm an audience specialist at InfoTrust. When I'm not helping clients with their activation strategies, you'll typically find me out hiking with my 2 dogs. And I'm joined today by Lauren from Google.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Denton. I run a sales engineering team at Google, and we focus on translating business objectives into technical and data solutions. Great. With that, I will kick things off with how impacted activation is by privacy. And if you go to the next slide, I'm going to start with a bit of a metaphor here. To give you an overview of how the activation landscape has changed in recent times, we're going to use the metaphor of 2 roads. Now, previously in digital marketing, we had different types of information that could be used to ensure that a relevant ad is shown to users. And that type of information could lead someone to completing an action on a website, any type of high-value action like submitting a lead or purchasing a product. And those bits of information allowed marketers to take 2 different types of road to that final destination of purchase or high-value action. First, the road of many, where marketers use information applied to groups of users to corral them into a bus of sorts to go along their journey. Or you could utilize the road of one-to-one, where marketers use information that was specific to an individual. Both routes offer relevance to their riders because when you are targeting on either road, including the road of many, the relevant ad experience is driven by the commonality that all users share. But as technology advanced, we didn't really have to think too much about which road that we used. We could track users with incredible accuracy across these paths and measure which strategies worked and really use them interchangeably. But if I take a step back and think about our ultimate goal, ultimately we want to create great customer experiences, regardless of where someone interacts with the brand. And we know that a great experience is one that is relevant or personal, thus personalization. The problem is that in many cases, the consumers were left out of the equation. They didn't understand how their data was being collected, how it was being used, and for what purposes. And if there was no direct connection between the consumer and the brand, they failed to feel the legitimacy of the connection, and trust eroded. What was meant to be personal ended up being the opposite. It felt disingenuous and somewhat unwelcome. But the rules of the road are changing and in many ways are aiming to put the consumers back in the driver's seat of their information. And we've talked about these changes today, so I won't go in depth on each individually, but I did want to summarize the impact that they have on your activation strategies. First, there's been significant disruption in what type of consumer information can be accessed in various environments and inventory types due to the regulatory and technology changes. In many scenarios where user IDs like cookies or device IDs are the linkage to accessing the consumer information, there are going to be instances where that information can no longer be observed. Second, a direct connection with consumers is imperative. And for marketing activation, that direct consumer connection needs to be a two-way street. It's not enough to just have consented information from your consumers. In order to reach those consumers across the web, you must be able to securely match your consented, authenticated information with a publisher's consented, authenticated information in order to deliver one-to-one ad experiences. So at the end of the day, our traditional marketing strategies aren't gone or broken, but they are changing as marketers try to rise to the new expectations set by consumers and regulatory bodies. And it's likely that the change will keep coming. Even this week, Apple announced plans to crack down on fingerprinting by obscuring the IP address. Ignoring these changes means you're just building your activation strategy on sand. Without a strong foundation of durable strategies or strategies that can survive these privacy changes, you will be forced into a reactive mode, constantly patching different strategies as different privacy changes take effect. So, what does all that mean for your audience strategies of the future? Well, I'm happy to report that you can still utilize the road of one-to-one as well as the road of many to lead consumers down a journey. But with the new rules of the road governing them, how you use each might evolve. First-party data is imperative to unlocking the road of one-to-one or precision targeting. Without it, no gas. Yet, you might find that there's less scale available as publishers will need to have substantial, directly consented logged-in data in order to deliver an ad to a precise user. Therefore, you may find more opportunity on the road of many. And by analyzing your customer data, you can discover insights on how to inform how to speak to those groups of users or cohorts in a relevant manner. These cohort strategies, guided by automation and machine learning, can leverage signals that apply to everyone and amplify your impact and reach. For the remainder of the session, we're going to dive a bit more in depth on some of these durable activation strategies for you to consider. Ariel, you want to kick us off?
Yeah. Now that we have a bit of an understanding of how the privacy changes are going to impact, let's start looking at what the landscape for durable action actually looks like. So if you jump to the next slide, we're going to talk through a lot of what Lauren's already outlined. We're going to talk about core and contextual targeting. We'll talk about how to take advantage of that one-to-one with first-party lists and Google custom audiences. We'll also talk about automation and more of the machine learning side of everything. So let's start by jumping into core and contextual. Core and contextual isn't new for most marketers. In fact, many people are probably using this today, but it might not be your primary focus. Contextual advertising allows businesses to target specific groups of users without relying on third-party cookies. Contextual targeting can include things like keywords, language on the page, devices such as OTT, geolocation, and site categorization. Many ad platforms are expanding what's already available for some of the upcoming privacy changes. Advertisers should continue or start to look into contextual and core targeting, especially as privacy changes are rolling out. So all of this is taking it into account from the advertiser standpoint. But let's also look at this from the publisher side. If we jump to the next slide, we'll see that contextual targeting is also a way for publishers to amplify the first-party data and the website data for those advertisers on their site. Publishers can use key values to help define the content that's on the pages of their websites. Creating those well-defined key values makes your inventory attractive to advertisers. In addition, you can build a good ad unit hierarchy. If you look at the example, you see there's a sports page. Underneath that sports page, there's different types of sports. This allows your advertisers to get more targeted based on what the user is doing on site. And this is just one example of what a publisher can do with the contextual advertising that they already have. So now we've looked at contextual. Let's start looking at more of the first-party audiences. Lauren, I'll pass it back to you.
Great. The next two categories that I'm going to cover focus on how you can use your first-party data and audience strategies. And then Ariel will close us out with how you can amplify these efforts using first-party data with automation. So your first-party data has incredible power to drive marketing results. And the new paradigm that we're in requires marketers to think more expansively about the first-party data that you use. It's important to not only use first-party data to reach consumers directly, but also to inform the cohort and contextual strategies that you employ to prospect at scale. At Google, we have tools to do both. And I'll talk a little bit about the two tools that you see here. With 9 consumer apps and over 1 billion users each, Google has a foundation of transparent, authenticated information on users that can be used to deliver relevant ad experiences. You can even see and control the information, your own information at adsettings.google.com. And these two tools are foundational, and I recommend that you kind of think about how you can formulate your audience strategies around these in the short term. Now, the first is customer match, where you use first-party data to reach consumers directly, or precision targeting. If you're already using customer match, I urge you to explore new applications of customer match to achieve even more business goals, as it is a proven, durable solution. These new strategies could include doing more consumer insights or profiling, so hyper-segmentation to understand how different consumer attributes drive impact. Product testing, create digital focus groups to understand how a new product line is going to launch, or perhaps how a new web design page is going to fare. Predictive audiences are also a really interesting application. You can activate against propensity to purchase or predictive lifetime value models to drive cross-sell and upsell with your current customers. And you can even use targeting and precision targeting to support your first-party data strategy. So what if you were to drive people to a place in your website where the value exchange happens, and then be able to use that expenditure in marketing to become an investment in your data strategy? So there's a lot of non-traditional ways that you can think about using customer match. The second tool shown here is Google Audiences, which categorizes information that you see at adsettings.google.com into groups of users that are interested in something or in market for something. And using Google Analytics or Display and Video 360, you can see how your first-party audience or your site visitors overlap with Google Audiences and to inform more contextual and consumer-related insights. You can even create your custom Google Audiences, and in a bit, I'll go deeper on your customization options. But before I do that, I'm sure you're wondering why these two recommendations for a durability summit, which is a very good question. And so let's dive into why these strategies are actually durable. Starting first with customer match. Unlike traditional remarketing, customer match on Google Media inventory doesn't at all rely on cookies, first party or third party. Let me explain. After third-party cookies are phased out, if I visited the website ilovekitties.com and the smart folks at I Love Kitties knew I was a high-value customer and wanted to reach back out to me with a YouTube ad, there would be no way to find me across the universe of YouTube watchers. That's because ilovekitties.com assigned me a unique identifier or a first-party cookie, let's say 123, but that's not the same identifier that YouTube assigned me. They did their own ID assignment. Let's say I was ABC to them, and there's no translation of how 123s match up with ABCs. The translator was the third-party cookie. And without it, we aren't able to find the individuals who you want to remarket to. That's where Customer Match comes in. It allows you to take a list of authenticated customers with email addresses, phone numbers, or physical addresses, securely hash or obscure their personal information in an irreversible one-way manner, and then join it with Google's authenticated customer information to deliver relevant ad experiences to matched users. And Customer Match is not just durable. As I mentioned, it is a proven strategy. If you give me one more click, on average, Customer Match has 67% higher conversion rate than non-audience traffic and roughly a 20% higher performance than general remarketing. Now let's switch gears to Google Audiences. What makes Google Audiences a durable strategy that you should consider? Built using an array of different signals, Google Audiences are designed with robustness in mind. Our audiences continue to deliver in any environment by utilizing the best combination of signals available for that given scenario. In scenarios where user signals are available, such as perhaps being signed in on YouTube, Google Audiences can utilize the full array of data available. And in this scenario, we're able to much more efficiently predict the purchase intent and also directly observe their chosen ad settings and preferences. When user signals are not available because somebody has opted out or cookies have been constrained, the audience signals are not as clear. So we lean on our contextual signals and our broader machine learning systems in order to understand how to categorize that user. In the future, when third-party cookies are completely phased out, we are evaluating how to incorporate group signals from Privacy API proposal called Flock. And then we will also still apply our broader modeling systems to make intelligent predictions about the intent and the interest for that user. What's great is that the taxonomy and the workflow will largely stay the same with Google Audiences, even as the backend evolves. So the user signals that underpin them as those evolve. And so setting a smart strategy with Google Audiences today will pay off in the long term. Furthermore, Google Marketing Platform has tools available for both advertisers and publishers. So we also have the ability to utilize publisher first-party data to inform Google Audiences and Display and Video 360 programmatic guaranteed deals. This allows publishers to package up their first-party data, better monetize their site, while also helping advertisers ensure that they have the most comprehensive, privacy-first information to tailor their ad experiences on publisher websites. All right, I promised to go back into the customization. So before I pass to Ariel to talk about how to amplify these strategies with automation, let's review a couple ways that you can bring together these two durable assets, your first-party data and Google signals, to create that deeper customization. Depending on your objectives, you've got options to either refine your customer list based on Google signals or design a custom audience from scratch using what Google knows about users. I'll give you two quick examples of both. For option one, I Love Kitties is back at it again. They've got a new travel carrier that they'd like to promote, but they aren't sure which of their customers are planning to travel. With combined audiences, they can upload a list of high-value customers and combine it with a Google audience for in-market for travel, allowing them to address only those soon-to-be traveling kitty lovers. This can be a powerful way to refine your audience based on signals that might not be available in your database. But the travel carrier upsell isn't the only objective that I Love Kitties has. They also need to hit a growth target for new customers. And for that marketing objective, I Love Kitties could use keywords, URLs, apps for key kitty blogs, pet care websites, and any other relevant places that people look for all things kitty. That all of those websites and apps and keywords can be used to define your own custom audience. And this allows you to use Google's information to create segments that are specific to your business and your objectives. And again, since both options utilize durable assets, they are audiences that can be used today and into the future to create stability during an uncertain and ever-evolving time.
So Lauren touched a lot on automation, but we're going to expand that because it's such an important topic. Ad platforms typically have built-in machine learning models. You heard Lauren mention a couple of them for the Google platforms. One of the many use cases of those is expanding the reach. So Lauren went in depth on how that can happen and some of the examples for using just first-party data. Not only can it expand reach, as Lauren mentioned, it can also help with conversions. So not just brand reach, but also looking for other users who might be likely to convert, but don't necessarily know your brand today. In addition to machine learning on that side, you can also use machine learning for bidding. Smart bidding is just one example. Google platforms have a number of different smart bidding algorithms that can be used, but all of them have a core idea of making a decision at auction time based on previous signals that you have given them or they have in their databases. These are just two of the use cases for automation. And if you go to the next slide, we'll look at how to use your own first-party data as well. So many businesses already build predictive models. It could be customer lifetime value. It could be propensity to convert. It could be something else. These models give you an output, whether it's in a cloud database, in a Google Analytics, or you're sending it directly back to the ad platform. They're all tools that you can use to build custom audiences to segment and advertise to those users using the first-party methods that Lauren's already touched on. You can also use those signals for advanced bidding. The signals then help you target and bid to the customers who are most likely to convert, so they might have a high propensity score, or to customers who you believe have more value for your business, using that customer lifetime value. There's a number of different machine learning options, both built-in and things that you can use with your own first-party data. So we've covered a lot in this section, and we thought it'd be good to wrap it up with a use case to show you a company that's actually using a number of these techniques today.
So I wanted to close with giving you some insight on how Google is navigating these industry changes. And here are 4 principles that are top of mind for Google marketing team right now. They are relying more on their direct relationships that they have with their audience. That means their first-party data and really tapping into how they can derive insight as well as use it directly in activation. They're also using automation to fill the gaps when data is missing. And that means both on the activation side, using many of the automation strategies that Ariel just spoke of, but also on the measurement side to make sure they're filling the gaps when they're not able to observe different events across the web. They're also being flexible with how they deliver the most relevant ad to users and thinking about an array of different strategies. And then they're betting big on cloud technology for measurement and insights. And the last 2 we didn't talk too much about, so I'll give you an example through a Google Home mini case study. When running a campaign on The Guardian, the Google marketing team wanted to create a personalized or relevant experience, but in a privacy-safe way. They started with their first-party data and tried to understand how the product was used by consumers. And one thing that popped was the interest in cooking and the Google Minis help for the home cook when they are cooking at home. So they took that insight and they bought ads alongside recipes in the food section. And furthermore, they use machine learning and cloud technology to scan the page in real time to customize ads based on the recipe shown. And you can see some examples here like, hey, Google, add ginger to my shopping list. So there are 2 key takeaways that stand out to me at this case study. When you're ready. So sorry, my actual Google Home is responding and trying to put it on my shopping list. So let me get back to the takeaways. 2 takeaways on the case study. The first is none of this requires third-party cookies to execute and is still incredibly relevant to consumers. Second, don't forget about the importance of creative. I think the old stat was that 30% of media performance was driven by targeting and strategy, and 70% was driven by creative. It's incredibly important that you don't forget to go the last mile and align the creative message with the interest of the audience. So now I'll pass it to Ariel, and she can show us how to get started on this journey.
Thank you, Lauren. I hope you have ginger on your grocery list now. So before we jump into the key takeaways, I want to start with a quote. So if you go ahead 1 slide. The greatest danger in times of turbulence is not the turbulence, it's the act of yesterday's logic. This quote really resonated with me because as we look to these privacy changes, your tactics from yesterday might not work, and some of them might. So we have to be willing to adapt. We have to find ways to be durable and agile at the same time. So I think that's a good step to lead us into the takeaways. The first step is starting with an audit. We mentioned a business audit already. I believe there's a form floating around that we might be able to pass back to chat. But start with an audit. Look at your tech stack, see what's durable, figure out where you might need to make changes or where you might need to beef up and get more first-party data. The second one is get in the mindset of experimentation. Identify new goals, set up new approaches for testing. Just get in the mindset of trying new things, and it's okay to fail. And finally, be open to transformation. Things are going to change. Cookies are going away, yes, but as you can hear, everything isn't going away. A lot of the strategies we talked about today are things you can start doing now. That will set you up to be ready for that transformation in 12 or 18 months so that you don't have to be reactive at that point in time. Thank you all for your time. Thank you, Lauren, for co-presenting. And I will pass it back over to Pat.
Awesome. Thank you, Lauren. Thank you, Ariel. Thank you, Lauren's Google Home device, special guest star. We were not expecting that, but good job all around. I really appreciate the fact that you didn't just stop at, hey, make use of your first party data. You actually went into tactics and strategy around that. I think that was very impactful. And then back to Sean's original point, performance is not at the odds of privacy. You can still drive performance in a privacy-centric world. Great job. Thank you both so much. We are going to take another break for a few minutes, and we're going to be joined by some folks talking about, I believe, GA4 next. So we'll see you all in a few minutes. Thanks.